Did enough to wrench it away. Cotton the dive for Henshaw. You're kidding me.
Whose depth and resolve has been tested. Cotton drops.
Not sure what to do, so kicks it back up to the top. Shot clock at 5 for Cotton. That's ridiculous. Bryce Cotton at his very, very best.
Hello, everybody. This is Adam Batch here, and that is ridiculous. Bryce Cotton at his very best, and he did it again across the weekend as well. Adam Batch here for the Wildcat Wrap, Season 1, Episode 9. I'm fully charged, not just from a MacBook perspective after last week's debacle, but also from I'm up and about because 2 wins across the weekend. How can you not be? And joining me this week, as he does most of the weeks, I'm very lucky to have him, the main man from the Basketball Fix, Josh Higgins. Josh, how are you, mate? And are you yourself up and about after some big wins by the Cats?
I'm definitely up and about, mate. It's we've got to figure out some sort of punishment, I reckon, here, mate, for you bailing last week with 5 minutes left on the job. You know, I think I'll have to deduct a little bit of something there. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out later on as the weeks go on, mate. There'll be some sort of fines. But what a week, though. 2 wins against some really quality teams. You know, we'll break them down further, but basically 2 contenders when we think about it. You know, we looked all but out last week after that disappointing loss to Melbourne and disappointing loss to Cairns. But then we come back and beat, you know, teams that are 3rd, 4th and 5th, that same little bracket where we are right now. So, really, really impressive. And like I said, we'll break it down a bit further on as we go into the show.
Yeah, they were just huge crunch games this weekend. You know, as you said, Southeast Melbourne and Sydney, the teams right around us. And like, if Perth ever needed to be a contender, these were the ones to win. And they sort of did just that. So let's rewind, go back to Friday night up against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, probably the hottest team and, you know, the team with, I guess, the best form across the last 2 months, really. That they were just rolling. But what an enthralling back and forth first half, at least that it was, 27-26 to the Cats, and then 22-23. So if you carry 1, do your maths, it was even Steven. So just a really, really great game of basketball. 2 sort of contrasting differences in scoring, Josh, as I think we both saw when we were watching the game. Perth had 4 more 3-pointers, but 6 less 2-pointers. So they were shooting really well from 3-point land, but weren't really getting into the paint. And that sort of was a bit of a difference maker in the end. Minus 12 in 2-point attempts overall. So that still is room for improvement there. But at the back end of the third quarter, Southeast Melbourne, they got their ascendancy to almost have the game in their hands, winning the term 28-17. Perth, they just went cold from the 3-point land. None of 4 3-pointers. And Southeast Melbourne, well, they got their groove on, hitting 6 of 10. So the scene was set. Final term, down by 12 points with 8 minutes 50 remaining. How would Perth respond with their top 4 hopes on the line? Just trying to build up, Josh, as much as I possibly can. But they went on a 27-8 run, mainly with shots in the paint. Who would have thought? And the mid-range game, going 10 of 10 for 2-pointers, but also attacking the line 5 of 6 from the free throw. So, Josh, pretty sure you were there at the game, had some great questions, as you always do for John Riley. You're moving up there. Craig O'Donoghue is very much worried that you're going to be getting the first questions in here. But give us your little breakdown of the game and how they managed to pull away from Southeast Melbourne.
Yeah, massive win. I think, firstly, I want to touch on what you spoke about a little bit there for that last quarter in particular. It was the points in the paint. So I think that was a massive thing for the Perth Wildcats when we obviously spoke about, a couple of things there. And Keanu Pinder was once again huge, had the 22 points in this particular game against Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, and 50 points in the paint for both the Wildcats and the Phoenix as well, which if you would have said that to me at the start of the year with how these teams are constructed, it's a bit of a weird one in that sort of sense there as well. But I was really pleased with the overall spread, I guess, from the team. And I think obviously Bryce had a massive game with 29 points, but the 17 points from Doolittle, the 12 points from Henshaw, and obviously the 8 points from Ty Webster as well was really, really important for this particular game. And it was really, really good to see as well. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to mention, because one thing that we've seen has been a bit of a staple over the past couple of games, and I guess for most of the seasons, Al Munster. 9 minutes in this particular game against the Phoenix, though. So dropped out of the starting lineup and nearly dropped out of the rotation completely. So a really, really interesting game as well. And the other thing was Dylan Windler. Just really struggled to find his form and his feet in this particular game after coming back from injury. Played the 25 minutes, only entered the game with 2 points, but had 5 rebounds and the 2 assists as well. But this team is flying, mate. I'm absolutely loving watching this team. I think they're really, really competitive from top to bottom. And I'm just loving what John is allowing them to do. They're playing quite free, they're playing quite fun, and they're playing really fast as well. So I'm excited to sort of see where this team goes over the next couple of weeks. And I think one player, though, that I've got to mention right here, mate, and I'm allowed another couple of minutes because who am I going to speak about, Batty? You let everyone know who I'm going to touch on quickly in this game that I loved.
Well, it has to be the man that we have discussed on the injury report for the last 13 weeks, it seems like. Almost every single episode. Ty Webster, he's still got 2 hamstrings. A classic joke there that just has not gotten old ever since I did it. So tell us how you think the positive influence and, I guess, contribution that Ty made beginning on Friday and, of course, into Sunday very soon.
Oh, mate, I absolutely love this guy. So you're seeing some little plays here on the screen. Really good playmaker. You know, this guy can pass the ball, one of the best guards in the game. He can score at an efficient rate. He had 8 points and 4 assists in this game against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. And he just starts things. You know, he really gets involved. He's infectious. He plays really, really fast basketball as well. You can see him pushing the break here to Bryce Cotton for an easy little layup there, contested layup. And I'm just loving what he does. And this last little play here is what I want to touch on. I've just paused this here if you're watching at YouTube at home. A little screen here from Keanu Pinder for Bryce Cotton. Keanu just dives straight to the basket. Ty, easy little pass, bang. This is what we want to see from Ty going forward. And again, Keanu repays the favor to Ty. It was just really, really impressive basketball, mate. I loved every moment of watching Ty in this particular game. And we'll touch on the Sydney game as well very shortly. And he was once again just everywhere. And I will write an article this week, mate. There's 3 words that I want to say about Ty. Now, he is energetic, he's infectious, and he's fun. And that's what the Wildcats are missing. I think, obviously, Benny's having these up and down games, these up and down moments in games. And I think they're really missing that true point guard when we're touching about, you know, playing off Bryce Cotton. We know Webster can facilitate at a really high level. I think Ben sometimes gets lost in the fact he's got to score over 10 points or around the 15-point mark instead of facilitating the ball and maybe looking to get that sort of 6 to 8 assists. So I think where Ty Webster's going to really show his true colours is in the playoffs and coming up as well, mate, and it's going to be truly exciting. But what a welcome back for Ty Webster, mate. It was incredible.
It was. And he just made a heck of a difference just to the mentality as well of the team. And even the crowd feeds off him so much because he gives the crowd lots too. And he pushes the ball. He's got that pace. I think some people forget as well, going back to, I think it was that COVID season, 2020-21, where he played for New Zealand and he averaged high 20s. He was one of the best players in the league. And then he sort of went a little bit missing from there. And of course, he's had his injury struggles. But as you sort of pointed out really well, and I said a lot of people saw, to come back in from 6 or 7 weeks back and just to have that huge difference, you can't describe that. He is the classic barometer. And it's funny because about a fortnight ago, we had a debate on the most important player for the Perth Wildcats, and it was either Kristian Doolittle or Dylan Windler. And I don't know, maybe Ty's making a late charge for it.
Nah, he's definitely not making a late charge. I still think it's Doolittle by far, mate. I think that particular game against the Phoenix with the 17 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists with the 1 block, I think that sums him up as the number 2 man for Bryce Cotton. And I want to just quickly touch on Doolittle as well. I know we'll probably touch on it at some stage anyways, but we'll get it done right now. Contract talks and the extension talk. That's making me excited because this may be a controversial take between all the Perth Wildcats fans, and I'm going to say it anyways. I love a bit of controversy and love stirring the pot a little bit, but I kind of genuinely believe this one. I still think if the Perth Wildcats were to lose Bryce Cotton at the end of the season and would build the team around Kristian Doolittle, I think we'd nearly be a more complete team. Because I think what you'd go out there and grab is, obviously you want a scorer, but you're probably not going to find a Bryce Cotton, for example. So you're going to find someone who can play off the ball quite well and probably facilitate. Like a Kendrick Davis would be someone that I would love the Wildcats to go after if we lose Bryce Cotton. Because you've got Doolittle there who does everything else, and all you really need is a leader and a solid player, a solid scorer. So I don't know. I'm loving this contract talk with Doo. He's talking about trying to get the max extension he can with the Perth Wildcats, staying in Perth. it's really, really good news. And I think it's a massive thing for the Perth Wildcats to continue to get sorted and get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, I listened to that podcast as well, and and I saw the article too, and it was really exciting when he was like, "I want stability," because I think he's played in Puerto Rico for about 5 or 6 seasons now, and he's won championships there. And he says, he likes the continuity. So the fact that he says, "I want to stay here for as long as I can." If you're a Perth Wildcats fan, that is music to your ears. And I'm like agreeing with you. We've had Bryce obviously for so long, a luxury of having Bryce. But if he goes, to Japan or elsewhere to chase money that NBL clubs just simply can't afford, Doolittle, you just have to sign up, and then you're going to have more money to spread out over two guys instead of like a lot of the other money going to Bryce. And then not that Dylan Windler's a lesser player. They must have got him for lesser. Like, he's not obviously a lesser player performance-wise, but just like it might sort of open up a bit. Let's sort of roll into the Sydney game. This game sort of Perth really jumped out of the blocks right from the beginning. And pretty much throughout, they sort of had control of it, between 8 and 10 points pretty much the entirety of the game. As soon as they got to that lead, at times I think it got up to 14 maximum. It might have gotten down to about 5 or 4, but it really just didn't look like they were in danger. They controlled this game from my eyes from start to finish. Again, even contributions are across the board. Bryce, it's unfair on him because like he has such a high bar. And like he gets 30 points and he does the assists and he gets rebounds and he gets steals, and like everyone just expects it from him. And it's not fair because like he's just done it for so long, but you just got to marvel at how he does it game in, game out. It's simply like remarkable. Sorry, I've just gone that too long, but that remarkable word is just spot on for Bryce. So like, how did you see it? This was, I reckon, one of their really impressive performances from an away perspective as well. And when they knew that they had to win these 2 games to keep the faint top 2 chance, but definitely you want to finish 3rd if you had to decide out of 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if I spoke about this on Wildcat Wrap or Beyond the Buzzer last week, but I said this was more of a danger game for Sydney than it was for Perth. And some people were a little bit confused by that because the Wildcats were coming off 2 losses and were heading over to Kudos Bank Arena, where obviously the Sydney Kings have been relatively good against. But a stat that actually sort of rang a bit of an alarm bell for me, if I'm a Sydney fan, was the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard the fact that they've only beat South Eastern and Phoenix in the top 6 at home this year. So, out of the contenders. So, like, out of the top 4 teams, they've only beaten South East and Phoenix, essentially. So, that's a bit of a worry for me, if I'm being completely honest. And we might do a little bit of fact-checking on that, but we're not a Sydney Kings podcast, mate, so who really cares? We'll run with that anyways, mate. They're a poor home team. We'll just say that first and foremost. But it was a contrasting game because they never really got going. Jalen Adams, I think, really summed up the whole Kings game. So he played 14 minutes, had the 1 point, the 2 assists, and the 5,000 fouled out. So, like, he was just non-existent. And the one guy that I was really happy to see have a good game, and it's always good to see when they have a loss, is Cam Oliver. 22 points, 10 rebounds, and the 4 assists as well, mate. He's a guy who I'm reaching out to, like I said a couple of weeks ago with the Perth Wildcats. I'm reaching out to him and trying to get him over here in Perth because I think he would be the perfect piece. Doesn't matter who's on the team. Figure it out because he is an absolute gem. And they had some solid contributions, as they always do, from Kawatanoy as well. But let's get away from the Sydney Kings, mate. Let's get into the Perth Wildcats. 5 guys in double digits. So Dylan Windler with the 14 points, Kristian Doolittle 16, Benny Henshaw with the 11, Bryce Cotton with the 30 points, as you mentioned there before, Keanu Pinder with the 12, and Ty Webster with the 12. Now, the 2 guys I want to mention, we obviously spoke about Ty just briefly before, and I want to mention him again. An incredible game. 12 points, the 3 rebounds, and the 3 assists. Really, really important, I guess, for the team dynamic of the Perth Wildcats. Once again, that playmaker off the bench who can come on, provide a bit of a spark. He only played 11 minutes today, but when he was on the court, he was a plus 11, which led the team in this particular game at Sydney Kings. So you're starting to see that impact, which I spoke about earlier. And Keanu Pinder as well. Now it's been 3 games in a row where he's played really solid. 12 points again today with the 10 rebounds. He's back into the starting lineup. He looks like he's got that belief and that confidence back in his game. I think John Riley and the coaching staff are 100% trusting in him to continue to build that NBL season, because we spoke about this weeks ago again. He is probably the most crucial player for playoff success because Doolittle's pretty consistent. We know what Bryce is going to give you. And I think Dylan Windler's relatively consistent as well. And then it's the mixture between Benny Henschel, Ty Webster, and Keanu Pinder, where one of those guys or two of those guys have got to step up constantly for this team to be a championship contender and be able to mix it with the Melbourne Uniteds and the Illawarra Hawks. So it was really nice to see a really contrasting game, I guess, from the Perth Wildcats. They were solid sort of in all areas. 36 points in the paint, 23 second chance points, 8 fast break points, 21 bench points, and obviously had a really, really good lead there as well in that third quarter with a 17-point lead as well. Massive shout out though, mate, to our main man, Jesse Wagstaff as well. 500 of the good games as well, mate, for the Perth Wildcats organisation. Only the 14th player in NBL history to achieve the 500 game mark as well. So got to give him a shout out, mate. He finished the game with the 3 points and the 2 rebounds as well. So he only played the 10 minutes today, mate. But he just does everything so well. You know, Felix said it so well and Beyond the Buzzer a couple of weeks ago. He is what it means to be a Perth Wildcat. You know, it's all about the heart, the determination, you know, the leadership, everything that oozes off him. It's been 500 of the best games for sure, mate. And a massive congratulations to Jesse and a really, really good win by the boys as they come back to play Adelaide in Perth Arena, RAC Arena in a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And like another shout out too as well. And like you need these guys if you're going to be a championship team. And it's that big bench guy. He's certainly not getting as many minutes as he wanted, probably maybe compared to last year. Hiram Harris is just a massive guy who just gives them so much energy. And he's only getting, 4 to 6 minutes a game, if that. But like you need those guys and you can see it from the bench. If the bench is up and about all the time throughout the whole game, that's when you know a team is really connected. They're just wanting the whole team to be successful, and it's all those little things that add up in the end. So the C word, the culture word, that's where it builds there. If your bench is up and about all the time, that's when you're onto a good thing and they're on the right track. Just a quick one from that game too. Just for that, Josh, I think you're itching to give me a bit of Hiram Harris love as well too.
Yeah, Hiram Harris, and you mentioned that culture word there as well, mate. And it's been spoken about. We've talked about this last week. I was pretty, adamant about the fact of we're not stacking John Rillie. It's a stupid decision. We've got to roll with the punches. Well, everyone's talking about how everyone's hating playing for John Rillie. No one's enjoying their time in Perth, everything like that. I sat down with Todd Withers during the week as well. Go check that interview out. He spoke about the word culture. He spoke about how much fun they're having, how he's enjoying his time here. He's spoken about Hiram, for example, as well, being a really good bench guy and culture guy, and obviously has his chance and has his minutes and performs well. Michael Harris, you can throw into that mix. Elijah Pepper, David Aquera, all of these guys who sometimes play 15 minutes and sometimes don't play at all. They're really, really crucial because the whole commentary today around the Sydney Kings game was the fact that, Derek Rucker and Brad Rosen and everyone was just talking about how Sydney looked dead. The other side of the bench was just, a couple of the rookies getting up and doing a few things, but the whole Wildcats organisation was up and about. And that man as well, Todd Withers, travelled with the team and was absolutely involved in everything going on the bench as well. So, massive shout out to everyone. I think you're bang on there, mate, with Hiram Harris in particular.
Yeah, no, for sure. And love Todd. Just it seems like just such a good person. And listen to that one-on-one, just like, it's really good to get to know his story a little bit more as well. And, the fact that he said he would love to stay in Perth, so much dependent upon, I guess, the Bryce situation too. But lots of hypotheticals to go through in due course. Just like a quick one for mine, just like a stat from that game, which it's been a bugbear, I guess, of both of ours. But rebounding, well, they won it not only by 10, but they won the offensive rebounds 24-10. Like, that's just a smashing. Sydney, admittedly, they're not the strongest big player team, especially without Kelly LePepe. But they took what was in front of them. Cam Oliver, Xavier Cooks most of the time, Alex Tui, and they just destroyed them in the paint. So when you have the advantage, you've got to change your game plan. It's not all about the threes. Go straight to them, but the desperation was there clearly. So there'll be a couple of questions on that later on in the show in our world famous Q&A rapid fire. Let's get to a little bit of list management. So I guess, Josh, of the fringe players on the squad who are not re-signed yet for the upcoming 25-26 season, who would you retain? And who do you think the team needs to let go? And it's hard because we just spoke about these guys as being great team players, but in the end, it's a business and you've got to build your team for success, not just for the next season, but for years ahead. So of Michael Harris, Hiram Harris, Jesse Wagstaff, David Aquera, who has a mutual option, and Elijah Pepper, who has a team option. And some of these guys you touched on last week when we spoke about a young talent time. Where do you see, even if you just want to focus on one or two of these guys, if you were Danny Mills and you get to the end of the season, who do you want to try to retain? Who are the key ones there?
Oh, it's a tough one, mate, because without having the whole breakdown of what the roster's looking like for next year, it's genuinely a tough one, because the hardest thing for me is the fact that we don't know what could come in, but we know what could go out. And it's a thing in the NBL, a known commodity in the NBL is crucial. We see it all the time. These imports who come back for a second season are always better than they are for that first season, because you've got to adjust to the league. And that's why Kendrick Davis' season this year is historical in terms of how good he has been, because he's just adjusted seamlessly to the NBL game style and the way it's all played. So known commodities is the real thing, and I absolutely love a few of these guys. I love all these guys, to be fair, but I've actually got some sort of a personal relationship with, in particular, Elijah and Michael, and it makes it very, very hard to obviously want to see them to go anywhere else. But I'll say it with this, and it's a sort of the glass half full mentality. I personally think I'd love to see Michael Harris back in a Perth Wildcats uniform, but I think for his career to continue to develop, he's going to go elsewhere, because I think he's sitting on the back of the bench wasting away. He's a guy who averaged over 20-odd points in the NBL 1 West, led the Warwick Senators to a massive year, and has just not really had much of an opportunity to show that development in his game from this season to last season. And I personally think, from his perspective, he should explore other options. I know he loves Perth. He's an Adelaide boy, I do believe, off the top of my head. But I think he needs to explore. Hiram, I'm keeping. I think he's 100% a sign, because Hiram's the next Jesse Wagstaff. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the next Jesse Wagstaff in terms of playing 500 games for the Perth Wildcats, but I'm saying the role that Hiram plays is what Jesse Wagstaff does. Now, the only question that I have, though, is the Jesse Wagstaff role over the last couple of seasons revolved around one man, and that's Bryce Cotton. So if Bryce Cotton doesn't get signed, there's a chance maybe Jesse retires. There's a chance that Hiram Harris will not be re-signed to the team, and then we could lose both of those guys as well. Now, David Aquera, if you would have asked me this 12 months ago, mate, I would have said there's no way in hell that I'm bringing David Aquera back next season, right? Because he showed glimpses, but just never took it to the next level. Once again, NBL 1 West, really, really solid. Got his opportunity in the NBL, never took advantage of it. This last sort of 2 months, I've seen a different player. Confidence, excitement, ability, everything I'm just loving about his game. So I personally think he's got that Majuk Deng sort of build where he's gangly, he can rebound really well, he's effective from outside, he's the hard-working guy. You need a few of these guys coming off the bench, right? Let's not get it twisted. He's not going to be an NBL star or a starter, I don't think. I think he's going to be a very solid role player in the league. So I think we keep him as well. And Elijah, I think we hold on to him. I know he's got aspirations of going and playing in the NBA. I'm not sure he's had the season where it's propelled him into an NBA role. I still think he's quite a bit away. And he's got a lot to learn, because obviously he's been the number one guy for so long in college, at the high school level, and he's really gone down to the 4th or 5th option. And it's a bit of a shock. You know, you see him go into games, and there was one game against Melbourne United where he had a really poor shot, and you saw Kristian Doolittle get sucked into him. And he sort of dropped the head a little bit, you know, lost a little bit of confidence. And that's the thing. It's like, I think it was like a turnover. We were down by 5 or 6 points with a quarter to go. And instead of, you know, resetting the shot clock and sort of working into the set, he just threw up a poor 3-point shot, and it was quite deep as well. And Doolittle absolutely rinsed him. But I think he's got a lot of improvement to go. I think he can be a solid starter in the NBL. He's never going to be like Chris Goulding sort of player, but I think he's got the characteristics of being that. I think he's like at his peak, a 15-point per game scorer in the NBL. So realistically, mate, I've probably sat on the fence with all of them. I'd love to see all of them re-sign, but if I was to pick 3 out of the 5, I'd be bringing back Elijah Pepper, David Aquera, and Jesse Wagstaff for mine, mate. But yeah, what about you, mate? What have you decided to go?
I think I'll zero in on one, and that's Elijah for mine. So I sort of spoke about him a couple of weeks ago. I think similar to what Ben Henschel did last season, went over to the NZNBL. I'm pretty sure he won a championship there. and he just had a breakout season. And this year, whilst he has been admittedly a little bit inconsistent, his game has gone to another level. Played for Australia for some World Cup qualifiers too, and had some good games there. So I think Elijah, wherever he gets signed up for an NBL 1 perspective, I'm sure he'll go somewhere. If he has, just a really strong season, then comes back. If the stars line up for Ben and he ends up getting to G League or NBA at the best possible scenario, then suddenly a spot opens up for him. There's 10 to 12 minutes available that Elisha can take. So, yeah, I think that from a team perspective, if you're Perth, and I'm pretty sure I said last week, it's got to be a no-brainer. You've got to bring him back. He's got so much improvement. The sky's the limit for this guy.
I think you're bang on there, mate. I didn't think about that, actually, with Ben potentially going to the NBA. That's a really good call. Like, I think for Elijah to really increase, I think what John does very well is he tempers expectations with these young guys. He doesn't just give them what they want. And that was a bit of a reason as to why Luke Travers went to Melbourne United, because he wanted the role and didn't really want to earn it, essentially. But John's spoken about it many, many times. He makes these guys earn it. So when they get that role, they understand how hard they have to work for it, and they know the level that they've got to stay at. So, yeah, it's a really good point there, mate. You were bang on with that one.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. So 1 every 4 episodes, I come up with something good to say. I just hope that the fans will really appreciate that. So, all right, let's get to the hypothetical of the week. So last week we looked at a little bit of a wider perspective, looked at the NBL and what could be brought into the NBL to make it a little bit better. But let's go back to our Perth Wildcats, of course, the main Barstool Fix podcast that is by fans for fans. And we love you so much, Perth Wildcats fans. But let's just say that there are, because of course this is hypothetical, not wishing bad circumstances on anyone, but due to unfortunate circumstances, the whole coaching staff are unavailable for the next match. And Josh, with your massively increasing prominence and well-known burgeoning Barstool reporter career, inside all areas, as I said, coming up close on Craig O'Donoghue being the first question in every press conference, and knowing all things about Perth, you've been asked to coach the team. So give us your ideal starting 5 and maybe your reasons behind your choices.
All right, mate, let's get up the starting 5 on the screen here. So if I'm being completely honest, mate, this is relatively simple for me. And I've spoken about a few guys and I've rammed home a few guys in particular. But Ty Webster will be the starting point guard for my particular Perth Wildcats team. I'd have Bryce Cotton at the 2, Keanu Pinder at the 5, Doolittle at the 4, and Windler at the 3. So that leaves, obviously, coming off the bench, off the top of my head, you've got Henshaw coming off the bench, you've got Al Munster, Wagstaff, you've got Elijah Pepper, you've got some really good scoring opportunities. And then, obviously, you've got that mixture between Windler and Doolittle on the defensive end, which has been a really big key for the Wildcats when they've played their few games together this season. But I think this is the strongest team. We look at the lineups over the last couple of weeks. We've obviously seen the assertion of Keanu Pinder back into the starting lineup. So the game against Southeast and Phoenix, everyone on the screen bar Ty Webster started that game, but that was his first game back from injury. And then the game against the Sydney Kings was the exact same lineup as well. So obviously Ty was coming off the bench again and Benny Henshaw started over him. I think you give obviously Ty another couple of weeks. Obviously you've got this week now where you play the final game before you're going into the playoffs. But I think when the playoffs start, I think you got to start Ty because I love what he brings to the team. Now, yes, could he continue coming off the bench and would it still work? Of course it would. It would really, really continue to work and it would be a higher level because he brings something different that Benny Henshaw probably can't bring off the bench. But I still think for the overall team dynamic in terms of getting everyone involved, getting everyone going, being a bit selfless as well, I still think Ty Webster's the guy to start. So, yeah, really good question, mate. I think it's an interesting one for sure because it's been the talk of the town for the past pretty much 2 months. No one's known when Keanu was going to start. Now Keanu's back in the lineup. Everyone thinks that Ty Webster should be starting. When will we see Ty inserted back into the lineup? Doolittle, for his first 2 games back from injury, came off the bench as well. It's been an interesting one for sure. And I think we just got to let John do his thing and trust John in what he's doing. And he'll continue to find the right little mix, mate. But yes, my little starting lineup, Ty Webster, Bryce Cotton, Dylan Windler, Kristian Doolittle, and Keanu Pinder, mate, for me. But interesting one for sure, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And it's so hard to because, having a David Aquera or an Ethan Almanza and having Keanu come off the bench, it certainly gives you strength in that second bit of scoring power. And, Keanu has come out in a press conference, which I think was a question that you asked, Josh. How did he feel coming off the bench, and does that affect his mindset? And he said that I bring energy, whether I'm, come on at the 5-minute mark or right at the start of a quarter. So, and that's great that he came out, having that kind of attitude and mentality. Clearly, they're the 5 best players in the team. And if you're starting a grand final championship series, you would be starting with them. Like, you would be silly not to. But I think the fact that, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, when Doolittle has come back from injury, when Webster's come back from injury, most of the time they've started off the bench. And I've loved that because I'm a big AFL person. You don't want to bring someone straight away and just put him straight into the team. Just let him give him 15 minutes, then give him 20 minutes, then give him 25. Just build him up. You don't want to have all your hopes on this one player coming back and making that much of a difference. But clearly their depth has sort of paid dividends, to allow them to have Iman to start, or David Aquera start, or, Elijah or Ben start, etc. at times. So it's good that they're in that position. And yeah, we have to trust John. There are a lot of John really haters out there, and that's fine. Everyone's allowed to have their view and opinion. But at the moment, he's got them into a position where, they're looking quite settled in the top 4. And, there's a slim possibility that they can make the top 2. So who knows? So far, so good. Let's get to some good news. The injury update is going to be very, very quick. Unfortunately, no Ty Webster joke. Slightly sad on that. But clean bill of health. So great news. Everyone is on the court. Everyone's got both their hamstrings. Had to quickly sneak it in there. Obviously, 2 arms, 2 legs for everybody, which is great. Let's look ahead. Look into the crystal ball. Do our predictions. Thankfully, we don't have to analyze 10 games for the next podcast. Only one this time. So the final game of the regular season up against Adelaide, February 7th at RAC Arena. I guess it's win. And then you hope that Melbourne United lose, win by enough, and the percentage could get you into top 2. It's simple. Adelaide are such an enigmatic kind of team. They're, a high-profile scoring team. We saw that the last time they came here as well. They can definitely push us, and just like every single game and every single team in the NBL. And I've said it numerous times, if you're off by 1 or 2%, you're going to get smacked in the mouth. So whilst this weekend has been amazing, so positive, lots of great things that we've discussed over this whole podcast, it's almost all for nothing if you don't bring the same kind of attitude and mentality in that final game against Adelaide. Where do you think it's going to be won and lost, Josh?
It's such an interesting game. Before I get into sort of the analysis a little bit there, mate, I just want to touch on this quickly. This is a must-win game for the Perth Wildcats because even if they don't make the top 2, top 3 is still the last chance that you have to have any sort of home court advantage when it comes to the NBL finals. So obviously what I mean there is 1st and 4th play. Let's just say 4th on the ladder will win that series. Then if the Wildcats were to advance from 3rd, they'd have a higher seeding than the 4th place team. So they would then obviously have home court advantage when it came down to the NBL finals. So this is still the slimmest of slimmest hopes that if we do make it to the NBL finals, to have home court advantage. But this game is going to be incredible, mate. I don't really know, and I don't think there's one particular area that this game will be won or lost in. But if there is, it's going to be points in the paint and holding the opposition to low points in the paint. So the last time these two teams played, it was incredible. We saw the Perth Wildcats, the Adelaide 36ers, going and doing battle at RSC Arena in the open air game. And I just think there was a few key moments here as you see Bryce Cotton pull up little mid-range shot there as well. We saw obviously Kendrick Davis. This little play here I'm a massive fan of. The multiple efforts that we've seen from the Perth Wildcats to force and really get some good quality shots. We just saw Dylan Windler there with a massive 3-pointer. It's really, really what I want to see. Ball movement kills the Adelaide 36ers. If you play fast, they're going to struggle against you because they want to play fast. And if you play fast, it does slow them down because they're having to play some good defense. Keanu was massive in this game as well against, obviously, the likes of Montrezl Harrell, Isaac Humphries, and Jarrell Martin. Now, Jarrell Martin's out now for the rest of the season. It's only really contending with Montrezl Harrell and Isaac Humphries. Now, I only say that, and the word only is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek because those two guys are absolute monsters. But one thing I want to quickly touch on is this next play coming up here as well. Elijah Pepper, I think, is the key for this game, right? Put him and give him a bit of an assignment. and make him sort of play against Dejan Vasiljevic. We saw it slightly in that game. Dejan had a really good impact. You're seeing him again there with a couple of little nice plays, getting involved. I would be really making sure that your guys who are coming off the bench are getting some nice little minutes here in this particular game. Focusing on your Elijah Peppers, your Itana Munsters, those guys as well, where you want the confidence oozing out of them coming into playoffs. But this game's going to be exciting, mate. I still think when I touched on that previous starting lineup where I didn't really mention what I wanted to say as well, the fact of I think that's the toughest and the best 5-man rotation in the NBL. The Adelaide 36ers could be fighting for a playoff spot. They're going to be desperate, but I think they're mentally drained. Kendrick Davis over the past week is saying, thank you, Adelaide. I've really enjoyed my time. He's checked out. He may as well get on a plane like Rob Edwards has from Cairns and go to your next stop because you're clearly not involved in this game. The one thing as well, which has been a massive thing for Adelaide 36ers and where it probably will be a massive win for the Perth Wildcats is the depth department. The Adelaide 36ers only played 8 players against the Perth Wildcats last time these two teams matched up, and the Perth Wildcats played 11. So extra little bit in the legs. Obviously the starters didn't have to play a huge amount of minutes. So when we see Bryce Cotton playing 33, it's almost unheard of over the last couple of years. He's always been 38 to 40 minutes. So I think this is a genuine win for the Perth Wildcats. They'd love to win one of these games at home, obviously before the playoffs start, and that extra bit of confidence as well. And they're going to be playing really hard because they want that top 2 spot. They want to see South East Melbourne Phoenix in the last game of the year and knock off Melbourne United, push them into second on the ladder, have a week off essentially, a couple of weeks off with the FIBA break, and then obviously letting these teams do battle in the play-in tournament, and then really attack those teams on home court advantage, mate. But yeah, what do you think margin-wise, mate? I think this game will be relatively close in terms of, I don't think it's going to be a 10-plus point blowout. I think it'll be in between that 5 and 10 points for me personally, mate.
Yeah, I'm sort of similar too as well. Yeah, in that 5 to 10 range, and I was sort of thinking the same thing in regards to depth. I think that Perth will throw enough bodies at them when Adelaide get to their 8, 9, 10, 11 kind of players. They just can't match it with Perth. So I think that will be, the difference. And losing Jarrell Martin, whilst he hasn't had, a Sydney King Championship Series kind of season like he did a couple of seasons ago, he's still a big body and like he can shoot outside. He can still finish at the rim. So losing him is certainly a big loss. I think the motivation factor for this very emotional Adelaide team, sometimes it works in their favor. Other times they're an absolute rabble. So 5 to 10. But if they're absolutely not on, it could blow out quite quickly. If you're a Perth fan, as you've done all season, pack the place out, put the pressure on Adelaide early and just make it a bit of a bloodbath, because percentage could be the big difference in the end between second and third and fourth. So every single point counts, both from a defensive end side, but also scoring too. And also NBL overtime, eat your heart out right there, because the footage that Josh is putting up, and also the top and high quality NBL expert analysis that we're getting, like just NBL overtime, just watch out there, because Josh and the team of the Barstool Fix and the Wildcat Rap, we are coming for you. And they say that sincerity doesn't get you anywhere in life, or flattery. I highly disagree with that.
Yeah, it's a tough one, mate. I'm still getting used to trying to speak and then try to get these little graphics up on there as well. So bear with me, everyone, as I start to get this going. But it's obviously to create a bit of a better product for everyone as well. But we're loving it, mate. But let's get into some fan questions, eh?
No, absolutely, 100% agree. It's the favourite time of the Wildcat Wrap. I love it when we get to do the podcast. So I'm going to kick it off, and we've got 3 questions from a super fan of the Wildcat Wrap. Daniel Evangelista, he stated, our defence seems to ebb and flow at times during the games. Josh, what can we do to prolong high intensity and solid D for longer periods?
Yeah, a little comes into buy-in, Dan. It's one of those things that I think the Wildcats either rock up or they don't rock up defensively. Now, I think what they've saved them throughout this season has been their offense, and I think the biggest barometer in terms of if the Wildcats are on defensively is Keanu Pinder. So we know what we're going to get out of Dylan Windler, Kristian Doolittle, and I think you could even throw Bryce Cotton into that mix. I think he's a really underrated defender. But the guys like Keanu Pinder and Benny Henschel and Ty Webster, who we're constantly talking about the consistency, and is their game at that point where they're the star player that we all expect them to be, or that a role player. That's the difference, I guess, between, the really solid defensive games and the poor defensive games as well. So it's a whole thing. It's buy-in. I think it's hunger as well. This team seems really, really hungry right now. which does annoy me sometimes because sometimes they do not look hungry at all. And it does really obviously scare me a little bit as we go into the playoffs. But yeah, I think that's sort of the easiest way of saying it, mate. It's all about buy-in, and I think obviously playing for one common goal. But got another one here for you, Batty, mate. With 6 players in double figures, dominant on the boards, both offensively and defensively. I think it's motivation at times that keeps the team from really being a favourite for the championship. How can John really keep the momentum going into the final series?
Well, like Dan, just like great questions as well. So please keep sending them in. But I think like John, really one of his favorite, I guess, comments that he always makes in press conferences, whether it's midweek, and even some of the assistant coaches do it too. Whenever they're at a training session, they try to win the day. It's all about winning the day, 1-0 on that day. So I think, you've got 2 great wins. You've got one more game in the regular season to round yourself out. Just play to the percentage. Do all the little stuff really, really well when you're on the basketball court. Get in your shots. Make sure you're defending hard. Make sure you're eating good food. Like, just it's all the simple stuff that really adds up. If you want to win that championship, it's the small percentage points that's going to be the difference in the end. So it's super cliche. It's that classic, we're just going to take it 1 week at a time. But like Dan, I think that's definitely what they need to do because they're rolling at the moment. Their confidence is high. So if they can just keep that sort of moving forward, take care of one last bit of business in Adelaide, which we know that they can do. They can do it. They've just got to come out, as you said, with that mindset, mentality, hunger, especially from, a defensive standpoint. What I was really impressed with today, just quickly going back to that Sydney game, is they were just that. They were desperate. They were manic. They were getting steals. They were hunting rebounds. Like the offensive rebound count differential, haven't seen that from a Perth team in quite a while. So, like, just finish us off on your thoughts on that, Josh, too.
Yeah, well, I sort of think it sort of comes back to what I spoke about in that last question. It's just the buy-in. It's about the team wanting that common goal, which is a championship, and continuing to strive for that as well. And it all starts with training. You can always tell a team which has trained poor during the week because they come out poor in a game. It's the old common saying, you train how you play, and you play how you train. And that's as simple as it is. If you want to have a shit training session, and you'll have a shit game. And that is just, it's really, really basic. Like, this is the thing that everyone sort of forgets about. Sports, keep it simple. Like, you've got to keep everything simple. It's always, yes, there's a few things that some of these coaches in all professional sports do really, really well, which tips them over the line. But it's only, like you mentioned earlier, that 1 or 2 extra percent. It's never something that's groundbreaking where you're 25% better than the rest of the competition. Yeah. If you look how close the NBL season is, that just sums up what I've tried to say there. So do the basics really well, the things like boxing out, the things like communication, playing for one another, and having fun. And that's where you start to see this team flourish as well. So I think they're definitely on the right track, mate. If, we were sort of sat there last week a bit negative and a bit, I think, more down than anything. I think it wasn't really negative. It was just we're a bit disappointed. But 2 good wins this week, mate. I think everyone's really, really excited for sure.
Yeah, no, agreed. And to round us out on the Q&A, and one has just come in then. So one Perth Wildcat question, which is not on the run sheet now, Josh, that you can see, and then one that is. So firstly, and I'll get you to answer both of them in your own time. Moose Hansen says, will BC be this year's MVP? Obviously, we all think so, but he has had an MVP stolen from him before. No comments at all, Xavier Cooks. And I guess maybe a non-Perth related question, but we do have lots of basketball lovers in general. Did you see the Luka Doncic trade and thoughts on it? So just round us out with a couple of thoughts on those 2 queries, Josh.
Yeah, let's get the Bryce Cotton one out of the way because I think that's an easier one for me, mate. I think he's 100% the MVP, and I think the differential factor between the 2 things is the fact that one's probably going to finish in the top 3 and the other one's potentially a chance of missing out in the playoffs. So when you look at the all-time statistical season that both these guys have had, though, it's a lot more of a closer conversation than what I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. We're seeing a guy averaging 25 and 8, and we're seeing a guy averaging 28 points per game. Hasn't really been seen in the NBL. This is Bryce Cotton's best statistical season ever in the NBL. I think his next amount of points from a standpoint is 23 points per game. He's increased 5 points this season, and he's already a 4-time MVP. So I think he's definitely the MVP this year, Moose. I don't even think it's a question, to be honest with you, mate. I think Kendrick's been great. He's been really, really good. But you're seeing at the end of the season here where he is starting to teeter out a little bit. And I think in that game where they played a couple of days ago, he wasn't all there. I know he had 24 and 10, but they lost. He should have dragged that team to a win over the injury-rabbled Brisbane Bullets. But we'll leave that one there, mate. But did I see the Luka Doncic trade? We spoke about this off-air, mate. This is just unbelievable. Like, I posted a meme on our Instagram, and go check out the Basketball Fix podcast on Instagram. Plenty of memes and keeping up to date with all these amazing podcasts that we're doing. But I sort of said on that meme that what is the NBL equivalent? So let's think about this for a second. The NBL equivalent of Luka Doncic being traded for Anthony Davis is like Kendrick Davis getting traded for Xavier Cooks. I think that is the closest equivalent in the NBL currently. You've got a young star in Kendrick Davis, and you've got a slightly older sort of forward in, Xavier Cooks. Yeah. That is a similar sort of trade, and you could probably spin it a few times, but it's bonkers. Imagine if I was to tell you right now before the teams were going into the playoffs that Kendrick Davis is now on the Sydney Kings and, Xavier Cooks is now in the LA 36ers. I think from Adelaide to be a poor trade, obviously, with how many big guys they've got. But it's bonkers, mate. I think the NBA does such a great job with all these trades and keeping everyone involved. I haven't paid any attention to the NBL all year. I just don't enjoy the league anymore. I just think it's really saturated. But things like this get me excited because you just don't see this sort of stuff anywhere else in any professional sporting league around the world. And I love this time of the year because the NFL's got their Super Bowl, but the NBA at this time of the year goes, let's take all the attention off the NFL and we'll just keep doing these trade deadlines right in the smack bang of the Super Bowl week. But yeah, huge trades made, and it's exciting for the NBA. But before we let you sign off, mate, I just want to give a couple of shout-outs as well. So obviously everything going on at the Basketball Fix is busy as always. We've got plenty of people behind the scenes getting all these amazing podcasts to every one of you guys out there as well. If you are a massive fan of the Perth Wildcats or just an NBL fan, make sure you go and check out all the other team podcasts as well because there are plenty of good content out there. We've also got Beyond the Buzzer, which is our weekly NBL talk show. Obviously, you've got NBL Overtime. They're just a step below what Beyond the Buzzer is doing. But we've stolen another one of NBL Overtime's hosts as well, mate. We've gone and snatched Damon Lowry from them as well. We had Felix on a few weeks ago. Now we've got Damon. We'll have Pete hopefully in the off-season as well. And we'll keep it going, mate. But really excited about that episode as well. And I'm looking forward to breaking down everything that's going on in the NBL world with Damon Lowry. And like I mentioned earlier as well, all the Perth Wildcats fans, if you haven't, go onto the Basketball Fix either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, and go and listen to the Todd Withers interview as well. Really, really good guy. He speaks about how he wants to be in Perth long term. He's loving WA. He's loving Australia in general, and he's really, really enjoying his time as a Perth Wildcat as well, mate. But I won't steal your thunder too much, mate. I know you've got those magic words to say very, very shortly before we wrap up, but been a great episode, mate. It was another good couple of questions there as well, and we'll continue to step up this production as we go along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I said, just like, please, fans, keep getting those questions in. So we love hearing from you. We are, the classic by fans, for fans podcast from the NBL, the Basketball Fix. So just, do all the good stuff, like, subscribe, listen, do it, and keep telling your friends, all your work colleagues, all your basketball mates down at the centre. So we are all about you, and we want to make sure that we keep producing great shows for you too. But from Josh and I and the whole team of the Basketball Fix, well, unfortunately, time has gotten the best of us, and we are out for now.
Did enough to wrench it away. Cotton the dive for Hensel. You're kidding me.
Whose depth and resolve has been tested.
Cotton drops. Not sure what to do, so kicks it back up to the top. Shot clock at 5 for Cotton. That's ridiculous.